All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live again, back on the precipice of a couple days off for me personally, or at least one day off. I don't think there's, I guess I shouldn't say that definitively. There will certainly only be one game tomorrow. Conceivably, if the Clippers and Jazz pull it out tonight, we could have two games Friday, but I believe the Eastern Conference semifinals are likely to commence on Saturday, so it seems likely that I will be taking a hiatus before returning at that time, but getting everyone in the room, getting the link all set up, talking with the peeps about the round ball. I'll certainly do what I can to discuss these two games, but we should have some time to discuss the ferocity that is Damian Lillard, the inequities that are Russell Westbrook, the other big words that are NBA players. So, yeah, waiting on someone to tweet a link at me. Until then, I will just sit here and look cute. We can talk about hair care. Anything else? Congratulations to those of you who won last night. Pretty sure no one had the perfect lineup because it required Rodions, Kuruk, Shabazz, Napier, and one other guy nobody was going to roster, or few people were going to roster. And that's a strategy, especially tonight, where we have only two games in one with obviously a massive line. That's certainly something we can look to employ. Obviously the blowout, or at least to me, much more likely to occur in the Clipper-Warrior game than in the Jazz-Rockets game, which is a series that has gone more one-sided than I expected to. It's a bit of an unfortunate pairings issue for the Jazz. The Jazz, I believe in the NBA, would least like to face the Warriors of the other 29 teams and then the Rockets. And you may think that's most teams, and that's a fair number of them, but they are particularly badly set up to handle the Rockets. And full outs to Quinn Snyder for trying many things. I've enjoyed his everyone always guard James Harden on the left. If you haven't watched the games, and it's been done several times this year by the Bucks, amusingly enough, I saw him play it maybe first. But basically, you just guard James Harden. If James Harden is, we'll say here, you guard him like this. Like you're literally at his using, military directionals. You guard him at 10 o'clock. You're going right. And it leads to some really interesting defensive situations where it's like, wow, you really can't reverse your body to get to that pick. Big thing playing basketball, they always taught you, or at least taught me, watch the guy's hips. You know what I'm saying? The easiest way to get around a guy is get his hips turned. The guy's in front of you and he's sidestepping well to either side. He can defend you okay. But if you get him to turn to run, he's real easy to cross over, put on his ass, what have you. Because now he's got to rotate his whole body and his feet and his legs, and most importantly his hips around. So if you're guarding me, well, any of you can guard me. I'm slow as shit these days. But if you're guarding me and your hips are like this, you're probably in good shape. If I get your hips like this or like this, then there's some small chance my old ass could shake you. So let's go ahead and, hey, look, it's a link. Hey, look, it's me. Woo! It's me being demonstrative in an NBA shirt with poofy hair. That happens when you go to the shower. So let's take that and do that and do some tweeting. The tweeting is done. But yeah, the Jazz not playing quite to that deficit, but a really particularly bad matchup for them. The Pacers, after the of the 6 concluded round 1 series, 5. Wait a minute, 5 concluded round 1 series. Most of them I got fairly well. It was off by 2. I gave the Pacers 2 games. They played them fairly well in the regular series, and one of the interesting stats, if you look back at that round 1 series, was the Pacers actually led more than the Celtics in the series. The series they got swept in, they were ahead more than they were behind. They were ahead at halftime, 3 out of 4 games. So that series, closer than the final score played out. I was pretty sure the Celtics were going to take it down, but I got 3 of them right on the nose, I think. But thought the Pacers would get a couple games, and I picked Oklahoma City to win that series. I could be wrong here. Pretty sure they swept Portland in the regular series. They 4-0'd Portland. And there's a couple matchup discrepancies there, and I didn't think Cantor would be as effective as he would, and I was worried about his existence on the defensive end of the court. And it turned out that Adams and his play and his deficiencies were much more the relevancy. Lillard really put on a masterclass of why traditional centers are difficult in the NBA against about half of the teams, and really focusing on Steven Adams. He was really the issue there. He's not that old. He's like 26, and he did not play particularly well and doesn't look 100%. Maybe he'll be great after a rest up. Maybe Aquaman needs to return to the deep and swim with the fishes to restore his prowess. Anyhow, I'm rambling a little bit here, but hopefully some number of people have filed into the room and we can begin some discussion here. No landmark hot takes looking at this. Again, we're looking at we basically all know what is going on here, but go through everything, then take a look at some ownership, try to see if there are any interesting pivots there. Again, should you have been lucky enough to have won 5 digits last night, which was at least 3 people that I know of so far, feel free to subscribe. That's all I ask. 2 people today were nice enough to donate to charity after a big win last night. I salute you. Massive, massive fan of that. I do not accept tips, please. But feel free to contact me and we'll make that donation. And besides, you're going to have some taxes to pay now anyway. Might not cost you anything. We can get some money to a good cause. Stuff. So I guess let's get in here and do the breakdown that we do. Game 5, Rockets up 3-1 in Houston. Do I think Golden State blows out tonight? And if so, will the starter see more than 33 minutes? That's a couple very arbitrary designations. Neither of those are purely binary Boolean type things. I mean, what does a blowout constitute exactly? I expect them to win. I am thinking about pushing our undefeated sports betting record on that game. Still back and forth on it. But they're favored by 14. So again, I expect them to win. Do they win by enough that it's right? I mean, so you look at games previously in the series where they win by 18, but it's close enough in that it's 13 with 2.5 minutes to go, and so everyone basically got their full time. So the real question is, does this blow out by so much that you get dumb people playing lots of basketball? And I do think that's a realistic possibility, which is why I ranked Jonathan Motley for tournaments tonight. I ranked Jordan Bell for tournaments tonight. And I think that is a viable lineup construction where you play Houston, Utah, Jonathan Motley, Kevon Looney, and whatever the hell. Kevon Looney, the issue being, doesn't get the blowout run. The blowout run at center goes to Jordan Bell. So depending on, I would probably play, I certainly would play Bogut, who's arguably very close to the best play on the slate. I would probably play Jordan Bell over Kevon Looney. For it to work out for Looney, you need either foul trouble again out of Bogut or this weird quasi blowout, like a full blowout, and Jordan Bell is on the court. A non-blowout, and they're gonna they tried last game. He fouled out. They're gonna try to play, Bogut 28 minutes. So you really need things to fall in a very narrow area of. So I would rather take shots at lesser owned guys who I think carry sort of a similar upside. But definitely on any 2-game slate, but especially this 2-game slate, your lineup should have a narrative. If nothing else, it should make sense if game A stays close or doesn't, game B stays close or doesn't, or just has some sort of consistency. If you're playing, Jordan Bell and I was going to say Steph Curry. Steph Curry is so ridiculously cheap on DraftKings. You can play Jordan Bell and Steph Curry, but on FanDuel, if you're playing Jordan Bell and Steph Curry, that doesn't make sense. You should be playing someone else. Good question, and we'll do more of those, and I'll constantly get drawn off topic, and we'll talk about those. So, anything relevant to say about the Jazz? Ingles has been bad. He lost time because he's been bad. It's a really bad matchup for him. That's bad 3 times in 2 sentences, certainly using that vocabulary extensively today. I'm not in. He's obviously in play in tournaments. He can be a great shooter. Hasn't been in the 4 games of this series. Could bang out a lot of threes. He's under 5K on DraftKings. His ownership is going to be 7% on a 2-game slate. You can obviously take a shot at Joe Ingles, but I really think that they understand that they need as much of Royce O'Neal and Jay Crowder on the court as possible to have a shot in this matchup. They basically need to run Ricky Rubio and Donovan Mitchell so the offense works, and you can't run just one of them. Otherwise, you end up with just Chris Paul issues, and it just doesn't work. So you need both of them out there a lot. And then after that, you need people who can guard the three-point line really well and a center. And so you're going to get a lot of Rubio, Mitchell, Royce O'Neal, Jay Crowder. And there are advantages and disadvantages to Favors and Gobert. It has been widely reported, I've seen 2 people write today, that Gobert lost time in Game 2 due to the matchup. That's absolutely false. He lost absolutely no time, really. You could argue he lost a little bit of time in the third quarter. So maybe he lost like a minute, but maybe 2 minutes or something. But he came back in. He got his, I think, second, third, and fourth fouls like 2 to 5 minutes into the fourth quarter. So they pulled him out the fourth quarter with 6.5 minutes left or something like that. In theory, that could have been 3 or 4 more minutes. But the real reason he lost time was he's not been good. And they wanted to go smaller, and Favors has been doing okay. They brought Rudy Gobert back in the fourth quarter for a minute or something like that, a very brief period of time. He didn't get any more fouls. He had 4. They took him back out, and Favors closed the game. So my read of the situations, and I read the entire transcript of all the post-game comments, is I do not expect that to occur again. I think it is, I'll say 2 to 1 likely that Rudy Gobert sees normal, limited a little bit, but normal minutes and plays in the fourth quarter. That's my best current understanding of the situation, and I have a number of alerts waiting, and if I get anything out of the pregame, I will certainly let you know. But my guess is that he gets a ton of time. The biggest thing to take away here is both Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert carry a fair amount of risk. Let's assume that Rudy Gobert has a similar game, and he has not been brilliant in this series. His best game in this series was Game 1, in which he had about 40 fantasy points, and that was the game in which he shot 8 for 10 from the field. Which, don't get me wrong, it's Rudy Gobert. He's going to have a high shooting percentage. But, everything sort of went his way, and was getting more minutes than he's gotten recently, and shot 8 for 10 from the field. And he got 40, which really doesn't make my socks roll up and down at $6,800 even. Anyway, now, is there a ceiling there? Absolutely. Guy can play well, can get it going. If you got 20 and 13 out of Gobert tonight, I'm not shocked whatsoever. He's absolutely in playing tournaments. Same thing with Clint Capella, who we'll get to in a second. But the real issue for me with playing Gobert and or Favors is the fact that I expect them now to share 48 minutes. And I'm not sure everyone gets that because it seems a little unclear. But in the last game, Gobert started, Favors came in for him, Gobert came back in, Favors came back in for him, Gobert came back in, Favors came back in for him. That's it. They put 48 minutes at center. Well, that was it. Okay, so there is no power forward time for Derek Favors at all. So this is going to go badly, probably, for one of those guys. Now, you can make an argument at the DraftKings price, which is especially favorable. Ugh, I can't believe I did that. To Derek Favors, that he's just fine anyway, even if he only got 20 minutes. And that's true. $5,300, Derek Favors can easily get on top of that in 20 minutes. Very productive fantasy guy. So is Rudy Gobert. He's just more expensive. But there's, I think, I get about 4 to 1 that accepting a blowout where your Ekpe Udos show up, those two guys share 48 minutes at center. So I imagine some number of people have Gobert and Favors and go, they're just too cheap. I just understand in the past, Favors started next to him and they would collectively play 62 minutes. That's not going to happen here. You're probably going to get 48 minutes out of them combined, meaning they obviously have a really negative correlation between the two of them, and only play one, and there is significant risk to either of them that the minutes go the other way. Last game, a little bit due to foul trouble, but also due to the fact that he was playing well, and that game went small as shit. We'll get there in a second, but I think they played 48 minutes of centers at least. I think PJ Tucker played a dozen minutes at center in that game. I'll go look at the game logs. I'm not sure who played center for Hesse this game. You'd have to sort of like pick a guy, but I think it's PJ Tucker a lot of the time. Centers for Houston played 34 minutes in that game. So, yeah, this game has a tendency to go small. So obviously there's less of a risk with favors. Again, we're talking about DK pricing, but be really aware that if you're playing Rudy Gobert, there's a chance he plays 24 minutes. There's not a great chance he plays 32 minutes, which is what you're sort of looking for in what's not been an ideal matchup for him to go off. So that's a little scary, even at a super cheap price. And favors, if Gobert does get it going and plays 31 minutes, I'm pretty sure favors play 17 minutes. Because, again, they want all the Jay Crowder they can put out there to guard the three-point line and be a bit more of a pesterer out there. Like, this game went super, super small. They went super, super small. Yeah, if they're the same price, Crowder is a much better fantasy producer and quantity than, say, Royce O'Neal. We will look at ownership in a second and discuss that. Going on to discuss the Rockets for a little bit here. We got the Chris Paul game last time. We didn't get the Clint Capella game. I said at the beginning of the series I had Harden projected to average about 55 points a game. And I had Chris Paul and Clint Capella at around 37 or 38, although I thought each of them would bust out at least 150. That not knowing exactly what Quince and I would do. We got the Chris Paul game last time. It usually does come at the expense of James Harden. Some people made some nice money on that where you fade James Harden, you make Chris Paul your captain in single game and lobster. Capella is suffering from two, and normally it would be my kind of thing to memorize the particular stomach viruses from which he was suffering. There was a media report. He had two different types of intestinal ailment. He went to the doctor most recently 3 days ago. They said he'd still be recovering for 4 days. Without being an expert in gastroenterology, I guess it would be, or immunology, or I don't know. That seems like a somewhat precise number. Like, you'll be better in 4 days. Not 3, not 5, 4. But Mike D'Antoni said that he was feeling a lot better. He said that he was feeling a lot better. I presume he's feeling a lot better. I would probably go there in tournaments before I went to Rudy Gobert. I feel a little safer about the minutes. I have him producing roughly the same in this matchup. I'm not thrilled with playing either of them. I would rather play other guys generally at their prices in one lineup. I would rather play Andrew Bogut at center. So, yeah, that's my take on those guys. PJ Tucker at $6,000 on FanDuel is sadly in play because of just how destitute the position is. $4,600 on DK. Yeah, I'd rather have Royce at $4,000. I'd rather have Jay Crowder at $43, but I'm fine with PJ Tucker. And again, game stacking may lead you more to him. You could play all three of those guys. Harden is brilliant. I have him as far as a guy I'm interested in putting in my lineups on DK behind Steph Curry and probably Andrew Bogut. I just think Bogut will go under-owned for the kind of ceiling he does possess, and I do think people in general overestimate centers. So I think people are like, oh my god, $6,800 Rudy Gobert, let me rub one out real quick against a sick, Clint Capella. And the ceiling is there. Like, I really like him as a tournament play, but it depends what the ownership is going to be on the centers. I have a feeling that Bogut is going to be under-owned, so real big fan of going there. You can play Eric Gordon. I wouldn't want to. He just doesn't do enough. Capella's feeling better. Daniel House is getting, some more of those minutes off the bench. I kind of like Daniel House on FanDuel. I won't go that far. I don't mind playing Daniel House next to Jay Crowder on FanDuel as opposed to playing Gallinari in a matchup I'm concerned with in a game that's quite possible to blow out, or paying for God Joe Ingles, who seems completely lost. Like, I'm not excited to play Daniel House. But at $3,600 on FanDuel, you can get there. I don't know. We'll go to the second game. Talk about more stuff if I missed it. Again, 38 minutes to go. We should not be running into any time constraints here. If I missed anything, I'm sure it will be covered in questions. Second game of the night. Again, it should be pointed out, a much more appealing fantasy environment. But again, everyone carries some significant amount of risk. because of the fact that it's a 14-point line in the playoffs. Zubac. Excellent. I ranked him in tournaments. I believe he has a D in cash and a B in tournaments, where he is the most likely guy in the event of a blowout to do huge amounts of damage. It is interesting to see, how that would compare to Jonathan Motley predicting, the minutes of those two guys. He is a little bit sticky. I want to see something and make sure that I get this right before I... So there's Zubac has, the one game where he was an absolute monster of the series was he started and played 5 minutes and then played the entire fourth quarter in a 30-point blowout and scored whatever the hell, 28 points in that quarter. Zoo, very much in play, but again, correlates negatively with... Now, you can't really get away from playing some starter on those teams, and I'm not talking about Pat Beverly, who's still way too cheap. Like, you kind of still got to get stuck playing a Golden State starter, and that's fine because it's a great matchup for them. It's the faster game, the pace is up, and even in a blowout, especially with Cousins gone, one of the other four guys is probably going to be good to great to amazing, even if they don't touch the court in the fourth quarter because they're up by 39. And my favorite by about 3.5 points over Durant is Steph. We had one game where he was dog shit due to foul trouble, and he's had foul trouble basically in 3 of 4 games this series. We had the last game where he shot 3 of 14 from the field and 1 of 9 from 3. I expect him to be a little less owned than Durant, though I haven't checked our official ownership yet, but that's my guess at that. And for those reasons, yeah, I would slightly rather go with Steph Curry. Right now we have them at 54% for Durant, 51% for Curry. And it's going to be a weird night if one of those guys isn't in the winning lineup, both because of just how stupidly low priced they are on DK, and additionally because of the lack of other really exciting options at reasonable prices. Double A for JaMychal Green. Why? Because I expect him to play at least his 20, 24 minutes, and he's a good fantasy basketball producer, and there's no good value. He's similar to Torrey Craig yesterday, who ended up not being good in a related story, but there's just not a lot of brilliant value. Name a better value play than JaMychal Green. On DK, you could tell me Patrick Beverly. I could get behind that and say Pat Beverly is a better value play. I think it's a little better than Iguodala, but we can have that conversation. That's certainly in there. But I like JaMychal Green's game. It has something to do with the fact that also there is no tomorrow here. He has gotten that vote. It's partially because I think his minutes are likely to increase. He has gotten that vote of confidence. He is starting. He is a good fantasy basketball player. And, I think there's a chance that the minutes for the starters just go way the hell up here. Again, there is no tomorrow for anyone on the Clippers. So I don't like Danilo Gallinari in this matchup, and I'm a big Danilo Gallinari fan. There's plenty to like. I think the minutes could go sky high here. He took 20 shots in the last game, made 5 of them. Now, when you're talking about anyone on the Clippers, this is a remarkably formidable defense that honestly probably gets better when you put in Bogut for DeMarcus Cousins. It's an incredibly good defensive team, the Golden State Warriors, and it's really a tribute to one of my favorite guys on this slate, Lou Williams, that he is so good that he's still getting what he wants in this matchup. I keep rewatching the games, and I'm like, Jesus, just getting through really narrow spots. I mean, he is underrated as a generational talent on one side of the court. He's unfortunately really, really not very good on the other side of the court, and that's a bit of an issue, but Lou Williams is some kind of scorer. I don't know where the hell were we were talking about things. So, I like JaMychal Green a lot. I have him at 26 minutes. That's ambitious. That's 4 more than he played in the last game. But, my job is to give advice. I think that's where that comes down. And, I'm a little more excited about that. I like Lou Williams much more than I like Montrezl Harrell. Obviously, a little closer on DK, where the discount between those two players is a little steeper. Obviously, if you were looking at Lou Williams, you're concerned with just less usage in the last couple games. Basically, in the 4 games of the series, he took 20 shots, give or take 2 in the first 2 games. And in the second game, took like 10 or 11 shots. That's concerning. And I don't, to an extent, I don't care, because I expect the ownership to be low enough because of those 2 games, and I expect the ownership to, the upside rather, to still be just completely massive. I think the Williams can put up 60 in this environment. I'm not shocked at all to see it happen. I'm not shocked to see him be low usage again. The starters' minutes trend up a little bit more. Them decide to keep Beverly on the court because of how critical his defense is for 38 minutes. And so on and so forth. But I feel like his minutes and usage are actually safer than Montrezl Harrell's, who I'm a little bit more worried about. Again, everyone we're talking about here is in play on a 2-game slate. There's just guys who are trending up a little for me, other guys who are trending down a little for me. So Lou Williams, I think, coming off the 2 bad games, not unlike, say, I don't know, Enes Kanter last night, or just some number of guys are like, I know the ceiling is there. And again, he got 40 and not 50 last night or what have you. But I know the ceiling is there. The ownership for a 2-game slate will have fallen off significantly enough that, yeah, I would want to be over the field on whatever we have projected Lou Williams at, which I will guess. There's that. People are going to Clay, and everyone's jamming Curry for a guard position. And there's Rubio, and people are going to go to Donovan Mitchell after his big last game. I'll say he's at 28%. How'd I do? Lou Williams, 27%. Boom. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily right, but it means that the awesome algorithm and I agreed incredibly. Yeah. I like Lou Williams. I would want to have more than 27%. Not miles more, but depending how much you want to risk. But he's just, again, look at the ownership and the prices of guys. How many guys under 7K, under 30% owned, can realistically pretty easily give me 50 tonight? That's probably just him. I guess you could make an argument for Danilo Gallinari. Like, the guy can really shoot, even in bad spots. So instead of 5 for 20, he goes 13 for 20. It's not outside the realm of possibility. So in theory, he's $600 cheaper. But he is simply less able to arrange open shots, and when you're constantly running into Clay, Draymond, Durant, none of those are very good matchups for him. And I do think the struggle is real, for lack of a better term. Again, I think I like JaMychal Green to find a way to get more time here. They just need him to pick up some time on Durant, if for no other reason than Beverly can pick up some time on Curry, and just not dissimilar to the evolution of Jay Crowder and Royce O'Neal as that series went on. He's just a guy they are going to want on the court, in my opinion, more. So, yeah. So someone, questioned my previous rankings of A and A. No, I like it. I was going to revise it for a second. Maybe say the cash A is dicey. Nah, he's good. And again, on FanDuel, we have him at 60-something% owned, I think I just saw, which isn't surprising. He's a power forward, and that obviously is whatever, and his price is very droppable there, so that makes a pile of sense. But, yeah, DK at 3,900, cash. I don't think the minutes go down. So, we'll call it a bad matchup for him. Say he scores a little less than a fantasy point a minute, although he's usually a slightly greater guy. So if I think he plays 22 minutes, I think he gets 20 fantasy points at 3,900 on average. That's an A in cash on a 2-game slate, pretty easily. And in tournaments, I think there is a chance that the minutes trend up, and so I think that's justified too. But definitely, it's on the lower end of an AA rating. Like Steph is like AA. I could have put 3 A's and 3 A's. So yeah. I do like Bogut more if I'm, starting my lineup with a front court guy and trying to figure out which one of those guys to lean on a little heavier. I do like Bogut more. I do think the upside is more easily attainable. I do think there's more clear evidence that the minutes will continue to increase, or should, rather, barring more foul trouble. So yeah. And then Golden State, obviously. The rest of the Clippers. So I like Lou more than Harrell. I think I described why extensively. Talked about JaMychal Green enough. Talked about Gallinari enough. Shamet, obviously in play. Ceiling obviously limited, but I'm fine with that play. On DK, I'll say the exact same thing I said before the last game, and this really worked out. I'd prefer Pat Beverly. You had a very good game out of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, too, but Pat Beverly is going to play a pile of minutes. 4,400 on DK is just too cheap. 5,300 on FanDuel is perfectly reasonable. I like Pat Beverly quite a bit, and depending on what his ownership is, I imagine I would end up over there, too. I would still rather play Pat Beverly than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for $200 and $300 less. Beverly just contributes in a few more ways. Not a massive difference. And if the ownership was 25% on Beverly and 10 on Shai, I'd probably run Shai. But I like Beverly by a little bit more, and he's saving you a few $100s. As far as the Warriors go, I love Bogut. There's no one on this team I don't like. We'll start with that. You can have this matchup, as opposed to everyone on the Clippers, you should look at with the hope that they get a pile of minutes because there is no tomorrow, and they're going out here, and so hopefully they just get, run to shit, and they just expurgate all the random, Jeromes from the lineup and just, run it out there hardcore. But at the same time, be concerned that this is a really bad matchup, even if the pace is particularly appealing. For the Warriors, for all of them, you should be like, yeah, this is such a great matchup. And it really is top to bottom. Pat Beverly is a world-class defender. Shai is very, very good for a rookie, and good by NBA standards. Shaman's out there doing the best he can. Zubac is horrible. Harrell is bad against the Warriors in certain situations. JaMychal Green's fine, which is one of the reasons I think that might turn. Gallinari is bad. So I guess my point being, a really good matchup for the Warriors. And again, you got to build a narrative. If you're going to super stack this team, if you're going to play Steph, Durant, Draymond, that's fine. But for that to work out ideally in one lineup, you want this game to stay close. So I'm hopefully playing at least Lou Williams. Certainly would be the first guy I would try to get in there in that stratagem. And, Beverly, at least. Something like that. I prefer Steph Curry to Kevin Durant. I expect him to be slightly lower owned. I have him projected to score a few more fantasy points. You said, what are the odds that Steph Curry outscores Kevin Durant to you today? I would say something like 55-45. I do feel it is more likely by enough that, I'm willing to not just say, well, we'll call them even. The more I look at it, I do think the matchup favors him. I do think we were looking at, not random, but unlikely to continue foul trouble on Steph Curry. Things going particularly well with Durant. Now, again, if Durant decides he wants to outscore Steph Curry, he's probably going to, and that's more likely than Steph Curry just deciding he's going to outscore Durant. That doesn't happen quite as often, but long story short, I'd slightly prefer Steph to Durant for that reason. Clay is just going to be an ownership question. Similar situation, you should be concerned by the absence of peripherals. You again look at that last game, he scored, I think, 27 real points in the first half and ended with 34 fantasy points because he doesn't do anything else. It's a little concerning. But obviously still that wasn't the ceiling. You could have done in the second half what he did in the first, and that's, 54 points, and I hear that's a lot. I like Draymond a lot. He is still well too cheap on DraftKings. I still have him projected for he's now a hair under 40 fantasy points. I have him at 39.7 fantasy points. That's very good for $6,600. In a raw point sense, prefer him to Gallinari, prefer him to Harrell. Iguodala I like quite a bit at those prices. There is just an upside there. I only have him projected for about 24. He has a real chance of randomly banging out 40, which we already saw in game 1. I think was the big Iggy game, but we already got an Iggy game. Looney, of course, in play. McKinney, of course, in play, is going to get minutes regardless, so he feels a little better. Now, the odds, if this game doesn't blow out, that he gets enough minutes that he ends up paying off that price. I don't really like any of these bottom end plays. I don't like playing Jordan Bell. I don't like playing Alfonso McKinney. But these are all guys which you can mix in if you're building lineups for in the event this shit goes sideways. And again, I would refer you to yesterday. We had 4 games yesterday, but that's using the word game a little bit liberally. We had 1 game yesterday, and we had 3 absolute punkings. The Spurs kinda, sorta, kept that game close for a half, and then at the start of the third quarter, they were down 28 because they got outrun 18-3 for the first 4 minutes of the third quarter, and that was just that. And anyone who watched those games watched Philly and Toronto put an absolute beatdown on Orlando and Brooklyn to start those games. Those games were never close, and the talent disparity in this game is greater than all of those, significantly. I mean, the difference between these Warriors, Sans Cousins, and these Clippers is really, really massive. And again, this I had this projected to be a sweep. I'm going to be wrong by one game because, I don't know, they got complacent, whatever the hell. And full credit to this Clippers team who went for full rebuild. It wasn't that they were trying to lose games, but they traded away Tobias Harris and picked up a pile of second-rounders and said, we're going to go for the future, and still ground their ass into the playoffs. Incredible job by Doc Rivers, who sucks at managing a front office, but is very good at managing a basketball team. Full credit to these guys and making that comeback. I mean, I am more impressed by what this team has done with what they had than almost any team in the. I mean, it's them and the Nets and a couple other teams where you're like, really good job with what you did versus what I expected. But there is a real chance this is a gargantuan curb stomping. So, yeah, I think. Yeah, let's look at some questions. And again, if I missed anything, if you have questions I haven't addressed and you're in the YouTube stream, feel free to. Hips don't lie, someone said. That's very good. I need to. If I ever do my basketball instructional video, that'll never happen. Definitely Shakira soundtrack. So let's get into some questions. Do you think Golden State blows out tonight? Yeah, we did that one. Do I think it will be a 20-point blowout by the fourth quarter? Do I think it is at least 50% likely that Golden State is up by at least 20 points going into the fourth quarter? I have to say no. I think I myself would say yes, and I will say no because I just assume Vegas is smarter than I am. When in doubt, I assume those thousands of people are smarter than the one me. Yes, I think Golden State absolutely crushes them, but Vegas is smarter than I am, and Vegas has them by 14, so they think that the average outcome at the end of the game is a 14-point differential, which, let's assume the benches play equal in the fourth quarter. They think that, they don't think that it is likely, greater than a 50% likelihood, that Golden State is up by 20 at the end of the third quarter. And I will defer to them as having collectively well more expertise than I do. So that would be my answer. Can you play Crowder and O'Neal in the same lineup on FanDuel? Absolutely. If choosing one, would you play Royce at half the ownership? Yes. That becomes an ownership question. Assuming, I do prefer Crowder. I have Crowder for about 4 more fantasy points. But at twice the ownership, that'd be about enough for me to tilt to Royce. Where do you get transcript from post-game press conferences? I have a friend who works for the NBA, and in addition to occasionally getting me little bits of video, they store all that stuff. So anything that's text, I can just get sent over to me, and it's a big-ass PDF. Actually, it's a deck, I think, but it's a file that says every word everyone said, which is kind of funny because you get random things in there where they transcribe, the popcorn guy walking by the door. It's pretty amazing. Would you take Lou over Gobert for DKGPP? Absolutely. Favorable to favors, but I didn't do it on purpose, and as soon as I said, this is a favorable, I'm like, DKGPP, playing Harden, Capella, and Rubio or Favors and Paul. Oh, sorry. Capella and Rubio or Favors and Paul playing James Harden. I would play Capella and Rubio. We did to Michael Green. Trying to listen for Boban's barks and determine which of your takes he's calling bullshit on. He's smart, and he watched the entirety of that game last night with me. I thought I loved that dog more than I could, but I went upstairs and got a nice, 70-inch TV over the fireplace, and I lay down on the couch, and I'm tweeting and watching the game, and I look over, and Boban is just transfixed. My dog is just watching the game. Watching the game. Everyone went apeshit at the end. He started running in circles. I love that dog. Who would your favorite GPP play be on DraftKings under $4,800? First thing I'm going to say is Pat Beverly, but I'm going to take a look at some prices. Then I'm going to take a look at some ownerships and give you a better answer. I mean, if Bogut is 48, we said under 48. Yeah, I mean, absent additional information, it's probably Beverly, then Iguodala, then Shea, then Tucker, then Royce for me. Assuming you already have JaMychal. Yeah, something like that. I like leaving some money on the table, by the way. Like $600, $700, $800. I would prefer my lineup is leaving $600 on the table than zero, for what it's worth. You're just looking to be different if you want to take down a big prize on a 2-game GPP. Can you speak to the single game slate for the Warriors game? Yeah, a couple of people asked me to do that today, or conceivably the same person asked me several times. Not sure how much there is to add. Again, I haven't looked. I believe the showdown prices on DK, at least they aren't a linear transcription of the multi-game slates. I would probably build for the blowout. And by that I mean I would probably take blowout value. So I would go back and look at the 3 games of the series that were complete blowouts and make sure I'm taking guys who are on the court in those blowouts. Look for the guys who are the most productive. I'm not sure Motley even saw the court in this series, so while he's super, super upside guy, and I think they throw him out there if this game is a 35-point game, I'm not sure, but he's with the team. Zubac would be the safer version of Motley, even though he himself isn't at all safe. But, yeah, I would probably run, like, if I was building a single-game lineup, I would probably run Captain Steph, Durant and Lou Williams, and then, if you have enough money left, probably, like, Draymond, blowout value, or... you know, something like that. I would try to take the blowout value and not the non-blowout value. I would try to play Jordan Bell and not Kevon. Like, because again, if you're going to play, you know, these $100,000 or whatever they are showdown slates, you got to give yourself some chance to not only win but win alone in theory. So, yeah, I would really investigate that value extensively. And if you have any further questions on it, ask me and I go into it. But it's a lot of time for one question. But you know, Zubac obviously being the first choice, I think. Yeah, guys you think are more likely to get there in that kind of blowout. But yeah, I'd have a lot of Lou. Very possibly Captain Lou. I just like Captain Lou Albano, Cyndi Lauper, everyone. So yeah, that is yeah. Would you play both one or neither in DK GPPs for Steph and Durant? If I'm building one lineup, I'm playing Steph. Not playing Steph Curry at $8,300 is asinine. Not playing Durant at $8,200, if you're not playing Steph, is equally as dumb. Yeah, I cannot conceive of a world in a GPP lineup where I'm not playing one of those players. You will have a very unique lineup. And, like, I'm really trying to think how you can spend the money. Because that game, the only way that neither of them get there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you need... Alright, so you need the game to blow out. You need Klay to score 65. Have Klay, by the way. You must have Klay Thompson in that lineup. Must. Not necessarily Draymond. Draymond can do absolutely nothing, even when those other guys are doing nothing. If you have no Steph and no Durant, you have to play Klay Thompson. Have to. There is no chance that Klay Thompson can fail. If it's simply impossible. But I guess if you want to do, presume this game blows out, and if you can spend anywhere near the appropriate amount of salary, like Harden, Paul, Capella, Rubio, Mitchell, I guess that lineup is probably viable because you're not going to have a lot of players with it. I assume something to the area of 90% of lineups will have Curry or Durant in them. That's an interesting conversation. I appreciate the thought exercise. Klay, Curry, and Durant in the same lineup, DK, GPP. I'm fine with it. Play Lou Williams. Has anyone heard of Capella being sick? Yes, I talked about it extensively, but he's supposedly feeling much better, although that could be complete and total bullshit. You say that regardless. And again, much better could be he was 50% last game and is now 65. That's much better. It could be 95. I would need more quotes. Ingles finds his shot tonight. Maybe. Not a good spot. How close are Lou Williams and Donovan Mitchell in DK GPP for you, and who has the higher upside? It's really close as to who has the higher upside. I will say Donovan Mitchell has the higher upside purely because he could take 40 shots. And I think Lou Williams could take 30. But Donovan Mitchell could take 40 shots in 46 minutes. That's a real possibility. There's a higher minutes upside. So who has the higher upside? It is Donovan Mitchell for me. I would still play Lou Williams. Gallinari, Mitchell, or Durant, Rubio, DK, GPP, one build. I would play Durant and Rubio most often. You mentioned Jordan Bell earlier. He has 14 minutes total for the series. Please elaborate. Yeah, I think he played the entirety of the fourth quarter in one of those games where he played 11 or 12. No, he played 8 minutes in one of them. He's played 8, 2, and 4 minutes in the 3 blowout games. And has done poorly, but he is a guy who can pick up a pile of upside. If you look at the last game he played in the regular season, he had 28 in 28 minutes. 2 games before that, he had 23 in 15 minutes of blowout run, and he cost $3,000, and it's 2 games late, and he's going to be 3% owned. So the elaborate is he could score 20 fantasy points in 11 minutes. But yeah, I believe I ranked him DD or perhaps DC, and it's one of the guys you would play in the event. Like, it's, again, when I do the rankings, the you get ranked if I would play you in 150 lineups. If I was playing 150 lineups, I would play Jordan Bell. And there are some people who take the list I publish and literally use it, drop it in Fantasy Cruncher, and then populate it and give percentages and so forth, and actually build their lineups out that way. So that's why he got ranked. I wouldn't have a ton of him. I'd have 7% to be over the field of 3% or something like that, depending on how risky you feel. But your most likely scenario is there's I'll say 40% chance he doesn't play. But there's, a 10% chance he puts up 20 fantasy points. And so I'd have more than the 3% he'd be owned. But that is the elaboration. Yahoo Cash, CP3, Mitchell, or Curry and Rubio when you have Durant. In cash, Curry and Rubio. Not terribly close. Would you be over or under on Donovan Mitchell? I think I'd be under, but nervously. I do think... I don't even know about that. I'm going to sit here and think about this for a minute. Let me see what we have him projected at, because over or under is going to be relative to that number. We have him at 34. I think I would be slightly over that. Because A, due to his age, elimination game, there is a real chance he plays 40x minutes and takes 30x shots. Secondly, the way the lineup is evolving, where you're getting less Favors, less Gobert, less Ingles, more Crowder and more Royce, that's more usage opening up. So there's a real chance he sort of bullies his way to something. So at that price, at that ownership, I actually think I would be slightly over on Donovan Mitchell. It is still a bad matchup, and he is not as cheap as some of these other guys as far as how priced they are appropriately to where they should be priced. But I do think I would have more than that. Good question. What kind of utility day is it for DK today? Non-center. I think your center, in one lineup, your center, in my opinion, should be Andrew Bogut. You can use it. You can build Capella Gobert. That's going to be a very interesting lineup. I mean, let me check that. Let's talk ownerships for a bit. That's the best use of the last 10 minutes. Okay, so refreshing again. Talking about DraftKings. We currently have Durant at 54, Curry at 51, Gallinari at 51. I have less than 51 Danilo Gallinari. Don't get me wrong. I get the no tomorrow. I get the 20 shots. I get $6,300 is too cheap for the upside. All of that is true, but again, if there's something I've said many times this year, it's that I look for chalk that has an easy way to fail. Yeah, Gallinari has an easy way to fail. It's called only playing 3 quarters against an elite defense and shooting 5 for 20, and hey, he just did that. James Harden, 46. I think I'd end up having more. Rubio, 43. It's about right. Klay Thompson, 42. Yeah, that's about right. Rudy Gobert, 40. I'd have less. And the $6,800 Rudy Gobert feels brilliant. I'd have less than 40% when, again, chalk, that has a very obvious way in which it can fail. Pat Beverly, 37. I might have more there. I like Beverly a lot at that price. Iguodala, 4,200. Joe Ingles, 32%. For some reason, Iguodala got a price and everyone else got a percentage. Let's try that again. Donovan Mitchell, 34%. Iguodala, 33%. Ingles, 32. I think I'd come in under Ingles again. Just too many ways that fails. Chris Paul, 31. Montrezl Harrell, 31. Clint Capella, 30. I would certainly rather Capella than Gobert then. Lou Williams, 27. I would have double. Eric Gordon, 27. I'd have less. JaMychal Green, 25. I would have more. Not a ton more. I don't think he's anywhere in the 100%er conversation, but I do think there's a real chance the minutes spike up to 25, 26, and in that eventuality, $3,900. I would want more than 25%. I'd want 40-ish. Shea, 23, 22. Crowder at 21. I would certainly have more. Looney, 16. I'd have less. House, 10. I'd have less. Anyone in the single digits, I'd have more. Royce O'Neal is 7%. I would have more than 7% Royce O'Neal. This says Derek Favors is 6%. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that number will be wrong. I'll let you know when I know what it actually is. But it's going to be north of the 6% we're seeing here. Let's see. Mitchell, Crowder, or Durant and Austin Rivers? Mitchell and Crowder. Mitchell or Clay, DK, GPP? Donovan Mitchell. What the hell does Donovan Mitchell cost? Am I incorrectly remembering his price? No, he is, well, okay, he's $1,500 more than Klay Thompson. I'm like, huh? But I would rather play him. Things. Back for more questions. Shamet exceed value on DK at $3,700. I'm fine with him. I'm purely ambivalent as a GPP play. He's needs a lot of things to go right to randomly bang out 30, but it's possible enough. Beverly and Lou will negatively correlate with each other. It's basically going to be neutral when you amortize all the pluses and minuses. Not incredibly so. And again, on a 2-game slate, you don't really care about a $4,400 player negatively correlating, or even 53. Beverly 37% on DK compared to Shea at 23. I would still slightly prefer Beverly, but again, I think we specifically discussed, I said if it was 25 and 10 or whatever, that would be about where it should be. So 37-23, I would probably rather bite the bit of the chalk there. Who do you like more between Iggy and Beverly on DK? Raw points, Beverly for me. Tournament, I'm fine to go Iggy, but Beverly I have for several more points. Favors and Bogut or House and Dre on a DK GPP? Favors and Bogut. In one lineup, I can't get behind House. You can have a House, Dre lineup there. 4,700 on DK for small forward. Where would you go? Have JaMychal Green in already? I imagine I'm playing Jay Crowder most of the time. I'll go Jay Crowder. Who do you prioritize between Harden and KD when managing salary? I would prioritize Harden because I'm prioritizing Steph. If you don't follow that step of it, it's very close for me. Once you have Steph, all the inherent math of every point Steph gets being a point Durant doesn't get, and Durant being so popular, so you're kind of fading him if you don't play him at that point, it makes a lot of sense. If you don't have Steph, then I'm prioritizing Kevin Durant pretty significantly over James Harden. If you have Steph, I would slightly higher prioritize James Harden, if that makes sense. Dre or Gallo if playing Curry, Bogut, and Beverly? Dre. Iggy, Royce, Shamet, or Crowder? Crowder. Thoughts on Jerome Robinson for a blowout play? I have to look. I don't recall whether or not he has been out there in those, and I don't want to... I like to pretend I know everything, but when I occasionally forget a little factoid, I just like to look it up. So I don't recall. He's obviously gotten minutes in the regular rotation. In the blowout games... I'm not sure he plays in a blowout. He played the final now. Yeah, not a priority guy for me, but they did put him in. He is fine in a blowout game. He played in the... Hold on, I guess I'm going to check every single game. I don't want to speak out of school here. The last game really didn't blow out to any real extent, and he was in the regular rotation. Yes, I think it's fine. About 3 minutes to go. Can House get there in a non-blowout? House is more likely to get there in a non-blowout. He's not going to play in a blowout, I don't think. But let's check. I don't want to speak out of school. Let's find one of the blowouts in that series. This game they won by 20. There was a blowout, and I imagine House was off the court, but I'll confirm. No, they put him back out there for the blowout. So yes, he can certainly get there in a non-blowout game. His minutes are actually trending up a little bit. There's, he's going to play 23 minutes regardless. And there's upside beyond that, and the blowout certainly doesn't hurt him. But yeah, he can definitely get there in a non-blowout. Things. How many actual points, rebounds, and assists do you project for Ingles looking at a prop? I think I have him at... Hold on. Let me go back to my core notes. I have him for 10.8 points, 4.2 rebounds, and 4.6 assists. So, a combination of... what the hell did that up to? 19.6. If that's the specificity you're looking for there. Green or Cap or Gobert DK single entry. Green or Cap. It depends on who else you have in what games and where and how. One of the Golden State guys is going to go off. I think at least one of the Golden State guys is going to go off, but yes, one of them is going to go off. Certainly quite possible more. We're down to a minute. Can't see a world where no one on Golden State is in the winner. Yeah. If somehow Steph and Durant don't get there, Clay got there. Like, it's just... Obviously, it's not a 0% chance. There is some chance that they play 4 quarters or lose to the Clippers by 30 or just punt a game and then get back at it in a few games. But the predominant likelihood, north of 99%, is that somebody on the Golden State Warriors plays a good game of basketball tonight. Not locked in stone, but... yeah, generally I would probably play Draymond Green, but Clint Capella would be close for me in tournaments. Alright, no news breaking that we can fix, so we'll do a little bit of ownership in a second. Not seeing anything. Okay, we are there. Alright, let's see what we've got, friends. Let's check FanDuel. Alright, 300K tonight. Way to go, FanDuel. And they filled it. Bravo. Actually, someone messaged me. They filled it a few hours ago, so nice job there. Clicking on some dudes. Let's look at this lineup. Ricky Rubio, 29%. I feel pretty good about that. 7,400 is obviously a number, but point guard options are kind of limited. Chris Paul, 45%. Yeah, what's interesting, James Harden, 55%. So, Harden plus Paul, I have a feeling, is a pretty unique lineup, because those numbers actually add up to 100. Now, obviously, there's some number of lineups with neither. It's probably pretty goddamn small. So, it's literally, in this 300K tournament, Harden 54.6, Chris Paul 45.2. Those numbers add up to 99.8. I imagine something like 98 out of that 99.8% has only one or the other. So, knowing that, I would probably try to run them both, just because of how unique of a lineup that is. That's really something to think about. How much upside do you lose on this slate doing that? Because inherently, obviously, they're two really expensive players, and they are massively negatively correlated. Usually your big Chris Paul game comes at the expense of James Harden. And James Harden needs to be not reaching his full potential for Chris Paul to be good, most frequently, but not always. And additionally, it's worth pointing out that James Harden might be essential on this slate with 57 fantasy points. Like, James Harden could score 57 and Chris Paul could score 46, and that could be brilliant for both of them. All you need is that other game to turn into a shit show and not Steph or Durant to have an above-average game, which, will happen some 30-40% of the time. So, yeah, I really, just looking at these first two lineups that I've clicked on, I would really like to build a Chris Paul, James Harden lineup. Just as a theory. And it's especially better because on FanDuel, with the fact that there's positions, like real positions where you get locked in. So shooting guard could be a giant shit show. You need Donovan Mitchell to be bad, but that's a lineup that, while it does have some expensive negative correlation in it, still is apparently so low owned. If I could build one lineup right now and play for money, I would start with James Harden and Chris Paul with my assumption. And I don't know if there's a way to figure that out, if anyone has a scraper or any way to look at FanDuel, but I'd be really interested to know what percentage of lineups have them both. I presume it's a single-digit number at best. Let's see, other guys. Jay Crowder, 50%. Yeah, FanDuel, that makes sense. Daniel House, 24%. Yeah, FanDuel, that makes sense. PJ Tucker, 30%. Let's find some other dudes. Joe Ingles, 18%. I'd still have less, but FanDuel, it's only like 5 playable small forwards. That's close. Clint Capella, 22%. I like that. Derek Favors, 13%. Okay. Royce O'Neal, 23. Yep, feels good. James Harden, 55, previously mentioned. Rubio, 30. Let's go on to DK, as I am bored for clicking on things. Let's see what we got. What was their big number today? I don't see it. I don't think it was the 70K thing. $400,000 on a 2-game slate. They know we're going to get in, and yeah, it apparently filled. So good on them. Good on all of you getting in there. All right, downloading your ownership. Here we go. Number 1, James Harden, 60%. Yep, 59.5. That feels good. I was about as expected. Yeah. Ricky Rubio, 45. Donovan Mitchell, 35. Yeah, we had that one right on. We had 34. I think I'd want a little bit more than that. Jay Crowder, 33. Yep. PJ Tucker, 32. Yep. Chris Paul, 31. Meaning there are at least, and probably more, 10% of lineups with no Chris Paul or James Harden in them. Could work. Rudy Gobert, 22. I would want less. Clint Capella, 18. I would want a little more. Derek Favors, 18. Yeah, that's about what I expected. Again, I was pretty sure we were light on the ownership on that one. That's fine. Again, my concern with Favors and certainly don't have Favors and Gobert was my point. Royce, 16.5. Okay, I'd want more than that at 4K. Joe Ingles, 14.5. Daniel House, 5.6. That's fine. Fareed, 3.5. Austin Rivers, 2.2. Gerald Green, 0.9. Georges Niang, 0.9. Getting into the blowout. Kyle Korver, 0.2. Isaiah Hartenstein, 0.06. Iman Shumpert, 0.06. Gary Clark, 0.04. Thabo Sefolosha, 0.04. Tony Bradley, 0.03. Nene Hilario, 0.03. Grayson Allen, 0.03. Tyler Cavanaugh, 0.03. Howell Neto, Ekpe Udo. Yeah, I don't think there was a way to play yourself here, was there? I don't think there's any. I don't think you can play yourself on this slate. Is there anyone DK has who isn't with the team? I don't know if Chris Chiozza is actually up. I don't think Michael Frazier is actually there. I'm going to hesitantly say Michael Frazier, congratulations, you played yourself. I don't think he's actually up with the team. But I think all these other guys are. Nazmi Trulong is definitely there. Howell Neto is definitely there. Tyler Cavanaugh's there. It doesn't matter. But again, on a 2-game playoff slate, no one may have played themselves. Yeah. So, good show, everybody. Sorry, no more, hot Russell Westbrook takes or whatever the hell. Just, it isn't there tonight. But yeah, Lou Williams. I guess my guys, Lou Williams, Andrew Bogut. Donovan Mitchell, I liked a little more than he was priced in at. Draymond, I still think was a little ownership, but yeah, there isn't enough knowledge, enough edge to beat the rake tonight. So have fun. But yeah, it's just not an environment where I feel like there's enough edge present. There was last night. There was most days of the playoffs. We had however many, 15, 16 days of the playoffs or whatever. I think every day but 2 or 3 there was enough edge there where I thought, yeah, I could beat this. But not tonight really. There just really isn't a ton there. There's a bit. People will misplay I'm worried about that center ownership. It's not like they're horrible plays. I mean, on DK, especially 6,800 for Gobert, 5,300 for Favors. They could collectively play 48 minutes and still be just fine. You could get 37 out of Gobert and 26 out of Favors, and nobody screwed you that bad. So there just weren't any, massive Greg Monroe-sized errors for people to make, but there we are. So, again, really looking forward to the semis. Giving me a semi with the East coming up. Looking forward to both of those matchups. Should be brilliant. So we'll almost certainly do a semifinal round preview show. Maybe that'll be just for subscribers again. We'll see. Maybe do a round 1 look back show. Maybe do an awards show. I don't know. See if we can put some extra content out there. But until presumably Friday, pleasure as always. Thanks for everyone sharing part of your evening with me. Bon chance and best of luck.